Friday. You are here. Come on in. Come chat with us. Show's about to start. You don't want to miss out. So many things to talk about. People lining up in the chat room. Look at them. J. Michael T is in there. KB Bells 24, Malone the Hasco. So many of you. Hello, hello, hello. Finally, Friday is being brought to you this week by Major Spoilers, VIP and Patreon members from around the world. You can show your support, keep this show going. In fact, get a lot of extra stuff when you become a patron over at patreon.com/Major Spoilers. Welcome, welcome, welcome to your Friday. I'm Stephen Schleicher, and this is Finally Friday. Joining me this week is one Ashley Victoria Robinson. Hi, Ashley.
Hi.
How are you doing? It's been a while.
I'm doing so well. I had Tech Week this week for my show in LA, and we opened yesterday, so I thought I would come and crash Finally Friday, because I didn't make a mistake this week.
We are glad to have you here, as well as all the fantastic people in the chat room. There's J. Michael T, and Major Spoilers is in there. KB Bell 24. Who else? Night Flight 42, and Vince 4044. 4044, right there. Just some of the people hanging out in the chat today. Well, it has been an interesting Friday. I came home from a meeting this afternoon that I was been dreading for like 2 weeks since it was set up, because I knew it was going to be about budgets, and I knew it was going to be about money, and I had many, many things to say, and I was just biting my tongue the entire meeting because I didn't want to say something like I normally would say. I had to actually be a good employee and just sit back and not do anything or say anything so everybody else could talk. But it did put me in a little frustration mood. And I tweeted out, well, that's done. Or thank goodness that's over. I think that's what I tweeted out. And then didn't realize that at that very moment, people were reporting that Dan DiDio has now no longer the co-publisher at DC Comics. That's the one thing that I can say. According to all sources, he is no longer the co-publisher at DC Comics. And this is coming out from Bleeding Cool is reporting it. Let's see, The Beat, Hollywood Reporter, Variety, all have something up talking about this. This is from Bleeding Cool, who says, Bleeding Cool is confirmed with a number of sources inside and outside of DC Comics that Dan DiDio is gone. Rumor has it, now this is rumor, I'm not going to report on the rumor stuff. I'm just going to say that. That's the only thing that we know as maybe fact. DC has not sent out an official statement yet. It is Friday afternoon. Now, of course, it's still, 2 o'clock on the West Coast. So they can still send something out in the next 2 hours. But usually when I've let people go on a Friday, it's usually because we want to let everything blow over the weekend, make sure that they've cleaned out their desk and got out the door. Friday's a good day to let people go. But his contract was about up, right? Ashley, wasn't there something where he would have had to have gone in to do some renegotiations on a contract?
Yeah, my understanding is that he had another year left on his contract. And then that was perhaps some of the reasons that, like, we've heard a lot about 5G, and is 5G getting moved, and what is the development looking like on that? Because the rumors are that was what, his play to see what that might look like. So I was shocked to learn that this happened, because I kind of thought we had another solid 12 months before anything was going to happen.
Yeah, I'm very surprised too. I mean, these things that happen, especially when it comes to contract negotiations. Last week, Tom Merritt had come to my class to talk about his life as an entrepreneur. And we talked about the time where he was basically let go. And it wasn't that he was fired. It was, for him, his contract was up, and he was told that we're not going to renew your contract. And so he had, I don't know if he knew it was coming or not, but that could be the case right here as well. Some people are like, this is, the DC had such low sales and everything, and that's why he's been let go. I honestly, I'm not going to buy into low sales, territory for a number of reasons, because Dan brought in the new 52. He brought in 52. He ushered in, the whole online media thing that is DC Comics. So if anything, he helped actually DC probably grow, especially with the new 52 and its launch. Yep. But at the same time, go ahead.
I was going to say, and Rebirth as well. Yeah,
and Rebirth. All those things have been, fairly positive for DC's growth. Certainly under, we've got a lot of the other titles and books that have been going on. But there's also some things that have maybe not gone completely right at DC Comics, as some people would criticize. Certainly the shuttering of Vertigo Comics, I think a lot of people point as probably maybe a not wise decision, bringing all of that stuff under the Black Label Comics imprint. That caused, what's her name? Karen Berger? I don't know what her last name is.
Berger?
I think that's Berger is her last name, but she ended up going over to IDW Publishing with Black Crown. And then of course there's some other things
Karen
involving
Berger, yep.
Yeah, there's some other things involving other people at DC that people are openly talking about, although nothing was ever, well, I mean, there were some things confirmed and a bunch of he said, she said stuff. But maybe Dan was protecting some people that should not be at DC Comics while letting people they should have been keeping go. So there's a lot of pros and cons with Dan DiDio's tenure at DC Comics. I never met the man, never talked to the man. Every time I'd see him do a speech or a presentation at a panel, he seemed like somebody who was full of energy. He seemed like a very huge comic fan. And so from that perspective, he seems like a nice guy.
Yeah. I mean, I've met Dan several times, professionally and socially.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any issues with him. He's been nothing but lovely and wonderful to me. But it's interesting because DC has, in the last few years, both waxed and waned like the moon, right?
Yeah,
like the New 52 was this huge crest, and then there was a really big dip, and Rebirth was this huge resurgence, and the Arrowverse was this resurgence, and they both, and even the DC movies, and they've, kind of had fallback, and then they've had more success and fallback and more success. And I feel like as long as I've been working in comics journalism and in the comic book industry in a larger sense, Dan DiDio has been on the bubble about whether or not he's gonna still be around. Remember in like 2013 when they ripped his Twitter account away from him, and there's been all these really sort of interesting moments with him, and people love him and they hate him, and this group loves him and this group hates him. But in spite of all of that, for me, as someone on the outside who doesn't know what's happening and anything like that, this feels weird and sudden. And you had mentioned something which I actually thought was kind of funny. You were like, wow, everyone online has an opinion about this.
Oh, yeah.
Which,
no,
again, that
totally
is what
does.
Twitter is for.
Yeah.
Steven and I obviously offer our opinions on absolutely everything under the sun. But I thought this news just broke.
Literally, I got out of this meeting. I was super frustrated and angry. I'm like, well, at least I can talk with Ashley this afternoon and everything's going to be calm and we'll just have a nice, relaxed conversation. And I sit down and it's like, Dan DiDio out of DC. And then, Rob Liefeld was like, good. I mean, every post that someone is saying Dan DiDio is out, Rob Liefeld is there to just, dig the hole to put Dan's coffin in. And then there's people like Gail Simone.
Rob is the king of Twitter.
Yeah, Gail is there and saying some very nice things. But nobody is perfect, and don't let me sit here and think and say that Dan DiDio is perfect, because certain things with Stephanie Brown and certain things with Nightwing that transpired in the storylines, editorial, I totally have problems with. Certainly, if some of the rumors are true about protecting some people and kind of forcing other people out, those are certainly very disturbing. Kind of things that people can look up themselves if they're interested in it. But here's a couple of things. The other reason why this is maybe we saw this coming was Doomsday Clock, and the fact that this was supposed to be a big deal, and then it was delayed
But
forever.
Steven, I'm someone from the internet. Wasn't Jeff Johns in charge of Doomsday Clock and not Dan DiDio?
Yeah, but see, Dan DiDio is the co-publisher, or was the co-publisher at DC Comics. This is the guy that needs to make sure that the ship is running on time. Jeff Johns, if you may remember, went out to form his own imprint or own shingle over at DC Comics. I forget what the Jeff Johns line was supposed to be. But
Three Jokers will come out someday.
Yeah. And
That's
so
what
there
I
really
call
hasn't
it.
been anything. There hasn't really been anything there that has happened. But then most recently, there's been a lot of talk about 5G. We don't really know if it's going to be called 5G or something else. Certainly, they've been sprinkling little tidbits of, I don't know if it's a soft reboot, a hard reboot, or what's going to happen. We know that they've already kind of said that Wonder Woman in Wonder Woman 750, that she was the first open superhero in the DC universe now. Everyone else was just masked and not really maybe doing their thing, but as true mystery men. But Wonder Woman is the first official superhero. We've heard word for like 2 years now that Lucius Fox was going to become, or not Lucius Fox, Luke Fox is going to become the next Batman as part of this. Certainly the delayed Flash 750 was going to have something else related to that. And then the Wally West thing, possibly taking on the power of Dr. Manhattan or becoming a god or whatever it is when he sat on the Morbius chair, certainly is going to play some role in all of this 5G stuff. But I guess Dan was a big supporter of this, if I'm not mistaken, right? So for having him exit before this thing begins also seems very weird.
It does seem weird, and it also seems, there's my Instagram picture, folks, go look for it. It also seems, again, it seems sudden, which is why I think we're all sort of like, what is happening? Because it feels like there are things in play. If they were looking for the corporate whoever that might be, the overlords, we're looking for an excuse to end Dan's contract or fire him or buy him out or, whatever this actually means, because we won't know, or we won't know for 10 years yet. It seems like there was a more opportune moment than this one to do it in. Yeah. Perhaps though 5G is coming a lot sooner than we anticipated, and that's why it's happening now.
That is true. So going back to corporate overlords, I mean, that is a really good kind of point to make. Warner Brothers was acquired by AT&T last year, and so those mergers have all been put into place. So this could be coming down from the top. Somebody could probably be saying, why do we need 2 co-publishers out of DC Comics? I'm not paying both of these guys all this money. Figure it out. Which one of them you need to get rid of? It could be bean counter
also
stuff.
Fair, though, right? Like,
yeah.
It's hard. It's hard when you look at it from an economical standpoint to be like, well, why do you need 2 publishers, especially when you're not there, like whether it's us or executives who aren't in the office every day and don't see, and maybe they don't need 2 publishers. I don't know.
Yeah. So this would mean if in the current status at DC Comics, if Dan DiDio is out, then that would put Jim Lee as the sole publisher of DC Comics. And that, I mean, he seems also like a very nice guy. I've only bumped into him once. I've never had any lengthy conversations. He always seems very chill and very relaxed. He's probably got some good ideas and good input as to what the youngins want these days, even though he's my age. Yeah.
I also know Jim personally. He's very, very nice. My always sort of concern with Jim as like a business figure is, well, he's an artist. Doesn't he just want to be an artist? And it's the idea. And as someone who has to do this a lot, I do understand that when you split your focus between 2 factions, that can be difficult. So hopefully he's going to be able to really focus on both of those aspects, because creative and corporate are not things that often work in synergy, as we know from watching the entertainment industry daily. Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, again, this is all speculation because this is all stuff that has come out. It would not surprise me if when they make an official announcement, because I don't see, it would not surprise me if when they make the official announcement, if Dan DiDio is no longer a co-publisher at DC Comics, but may end up in a Jeff Johns situation where he has his own imprint at DC Comics and is still part of DC Comics, or maybe he will be part of an editorial board overseeing, like the Batman titles or the Superman titles, which is where he was at for a long time. When he first came on DC, he was over doing the Superboy and Superman title stuff. So, I mean,
he could also be, you know, maybe this is more of a stepping back because he wants to write more.
yeah, and
we've
and
seen
he
him
has
write in
expressed
DC
that.
Rebirth.
Yeah, yeah, he has expressed the desire that he loves writing. In fact, he was just doing Metal Men, right? If I'm not mistaken, I believe it was Metal Men that he was doing.
And he did Sideways for a while as well.
Yeah, so maybe he wants to just get back into writing. So just because he's no longer co-publisher doesn't mean he's completely out at DC Comics.
Yeah.
So
but that's
I don't
what
know.
everyone who's making knee-jerk reactions is assuming. And, you know, the other thing about the internet, which has been a hard lesson for me to learn, is that sometimes you got to keep your knee-jerk reactions to yourself until you know the whole story. Because if Dan is still involved in DC Comics in a meaningful way, which, you know, by recent history with other people, you mentioned Jeff Johns, there's a good chance he will be. You know, maybe some of these people who are saying bad things are going to have to mea culpa or bite their tongue, because if they want to continue working for DC, you kind of can't say mean things about someone who's still very powerful there, even if they're not the publisher anymore.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, that's why the only thing that I read out of that Bleeding Cool story was the Bleeding Cool is confirmed with a number of sources inside and outside of DC Comics that Dan DiDio is gone.
It's the only thing there that's an actual fact, yeah,
that we know is an actual fact. But again, DC hasn't really said anything. I'm sure this will all come out in the next couple of hours, some official statement. I mean, this is already up on Variety and Hollywood Reporter and other places like that are reporting on this, but everybody's always putting in development. But I agree with you that until we really know what's going on, it's okay to speculate, but I don't think it's like Dan DiDio was the worst thing to ever happen to DC. I don't think is maybe the best approach to take.
It's also just not true, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
right. Because like I said,
you could not like him. You could not like any of the writers or the artists. Like, the worst thing that happened to DC was the Comics Code, and we are well past that, my friends.
Yeah, exactly. So here's some things that people need to keep in mind, that if Dan is completely out of the company, right? If he's now, you know, putting his whatever those services are that you can put your resume on and hope that people hire you. They're not advertisers here, so we're not going to mention their name. But if he's literally polishing up his resume and going door to door to each of the publishers, going, "Hey, Boom Studios, you need anybody to help out?" That's one thing. But regardless of what is going on, if he's completely out of DC, I think a lot of people are like, now things are going to change. Everything's going to be better now at DC. Not necessarily, right? I mean, we already have the May solicitations have already been announced.
Well, also like when, and I don't mean this any kind of way, so don't read into it, but also like when you get a new president, change is slow at that level. It is a big machine. It is grinding. It is going to take a long time before we get out of the shadow of Dan DiDio, for good and for ill, like with all things. Yeah,
I was going to say that too. Regime change is often complicated. There are going to be a lot of rough times, but if people think that this is going to be, you know, the news of Dan, if I don't look at the DC stock or the Warner Brothers stock, but if news of Dan DiDio's being let go, his contract not being renewed, if that suddenly causes DC stock to rise, yes, I would sell tomorrow before any kind of news comes out 6 months from now, when stock has gone way back down. So, it's going to be rough. I mean, if they are going to go through with this 5G storyline, if they are going to follow through with Wally West is now a god, if they're going to go through with all this stuff, that's all stuff that was done under Dan's watch, and it may take years for some of these things to be taken care of. Or they could just say, you know what? We're not going to do this. We're scratching all those plans. Everyone's going to work furiously for 24 hours a day for the next 30 days to get caught up so we can go in a brand new direction. I don't think that's going to happen. But it is something that people need to be aware of.
I mean, they're going to be working furiously somewhere in the next 6 months because they got San Diego Comic-Con coming up. But also, I will remind people that Emerald City Comic-Con and WonderCon are right around the
just
corner.
Around the corner.
And that might be worth bearing in mind, because there is a good chance that if there is a new publisher or if there is some sort of new person being onboarded, we might not get an announcement until they trundle them out on stage. Remember when Rebirth was announced at WonderCon? Me too.
Yeah. Here's the other thing that's really kind of weird. The Comics Pro event is going on. right now.
Yes.
And so we had things like yesterday, Boom Studios was like, yeah, some of these publishers are just publishing way too much stuff. Focus on quality, not quantity. And that Boom has kind of said that we did this in 2019 by slashing a number of our titles. We're going to continue to do that, paraphrasing what was said. So I'm really surprised that at Comics Pro, I don't know when DC's discussions were. I thought they were today.
I mean, I guess Dan's not there.
I guess he's not.
He flew back.
I mean, this would be a good time to say, hey, here's what's going on. This is really abrupt. This is really a surprise, I think, for a lot of people. So let's see. Malone says in the chat, I've had some complaints about DC for years. Now, I've had complaints about DC for years now, mainly pushing Batman over everything else. But that's got nothing to do with Dan DiDio. Yeah, I mean, a little bit. I mean, he is the co-publisher. He gets to decide ultimately what gets out there and chooses that direction for the company.
I do think that's an intelligent observation, though, because Dan is not the king of DC. You know, like there is a whole group of people that are part of those decisions as well.
Yeah. The one J. Michael T says, it just feels like DC has lost ground while owning the premier characters in the comic book universe. Time for new blood to see what they can do to change this. Or is it time for new blood to see what they can do to change this? Question mark. I don't know. I don't know who they would bring in. I know that some people I've saw on Twitter, someone asked them, hey, does this mean that you could, would you want to be the new publisher at DC? And the person was like, oh, heck no. That's just too much stress. That's too much to take on.
Joe Illidge.
I don't know who that is.
Joe Illidge is a really wonderful editor who worked at DC for a long time. Okay. He edited all of the best Batman events, in my opinion.
Okay. All right.
He's been at Boom. He's been at Valiant. I love him so much. I think he's fabulous.
Yeah, I think really pay attention to who are all the senior editors at DC. That might be an indicator. Let's see if there's anything. There's another. DC has no comment at this time on DiDio's departure. So, yeah, everybody's really quiet. I'm going to look at my emails really quick. I see something. Oh, here's something from DC. Oh, here's something from DC. Sneak peek of Wonder Woman 752.
I mean, that's cool.
It is. Let me look at this. Ooh, I love this cover. I wish I could bring it up really quick. This alternate cover. Who is the artist on this alternate cover? It just looks so cool. I think they've already shared it. It's Wonder Woman in profile with a blue tint on the background. It looks really, really good. This is a variant cover by Jenny Frison, Frison.
Oh, she's amazing. She's done a bunch of the Wonder Woman variants since Rebirth. She's a fabulous.
This one just looks spectacular. I'll get that up later on the site. But there is not any kind of official Warner communication from DC on this. So again, take it for what it is. We're just sharing the news that people are reporting, making some comments on it. We're not saying whys. We're not sharing the rumors on anything. Just some perspective on if this is a true story. I'm sure we'll have some more thoughts on this on next week's Major Spoilers podcast.
You already know where that wheel is gonna land.
Yes. So here's some things. Let's do some hot takes. We did the hot takes this week on the Major Spoilers podcast. You weren't there because you're doing this really cool play. We'll talk about that again in a moment. The first images, it looks like, of Pattinson in his Batman suit. Sparkly vampire guy in his Batman suit. Have you seen these?
Yeah, I literally just pulled it up like while we were doing the show because I was like, why is Batman trending? I mean, it looks like a bat suit. I like that the ears are long. Mm-hmm. I like a long-eared Batman, but you know, I look at this and I think, it's definitely a bat suit.
Yep.
And I hope he's great. You know, I want all things to be great all the time.
Yeah, so do I. I noticed that he's riding a bike in these pictures that have been released or people have taken pictures of and put on Twitter. No cape, which means CGI cape. And I don't know what's going on with his arm. It looks like he has shooty dart arrows on his arms. So I don't know what's going on with that. Maybe those are just some tracking markers. No, they're not tracking markers, but wouldn't surprise me if there's a lot of enhancements to this shot in post.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. This is someone with a telephoto lens, you know, on a roof 6 blocks away or whatever. And honestly, good on them because it gives us something to talk about. But
exactly. Lock and Key. Have you had a chance to watch this on Netflix yet?
Not yet. I haven't had a chance to watch a lot of television. I've been watching, it's so funny. I've been watching a lot of the old James Bond movies because I haven't seen many of them. And
so you were in for a treat. And some of them are also problematic, but.
Oh yeah, I mean, You Only Live Twice is actually not a bad movie if you take the racism out of it.
Yeah.
But we just watched On Her Majesty's Secret Service, the last
That's my favorite. That's my favorite Bond film of all time.
Dude, when you watch it, Inception, that snow scene at the end makes so much sense. But it's funny because, so on Geek History Lesson, obviously people are like, are you going to do a James Bond episode coming up?
Yeah.
And we did one years ago when the last Bond movie came out, and everyone keeps asking us for a top 5. So I've been sharing, Jason and I were on the Major Spoilers Top 5 podcast talking about our top 5 favorite Bond movies. So I hope that episode gets a lot of new listens.
Yeah, I need to maybe I'll redrop it in. I'm not a big fan of redropping in old shows when people can go search for them, but maybe I'll just I'll bump it up on the feed just so people can see it. But oh yeah, Majesty's Secret Service, my all-time favorite Bond film. When you have Telly Savalas as the bad guy, when you have Lazenby going through all of the rooms at night with all the women of the different nationalities, and then you find out their weird plot to take over the world, and then the ski chase down the side of the mountain, and then of course the tragic end for James Bond's wife at the end of that movie. It's all good stuff. That is a good story, and if you want to see a really cool adaptation of that book and the movie, I'm forgetting who the publisher is off the top of my head. It's probably Titan. But they used to do adaptations of the books in comic strip form, and there was a company years ago that collected all the comic strips into a book, so you could get like On Her Majesty's Secret Service or Live and Let Die and all these things in a bound volume. I would definitely try to go track those down. They're I don't think. I was trying to see if I had it sitting on the shelf here because it was a really nice book. But yeah, do try to go check those out because it's really cool to see that adaptation. So that is cool. Ashley is about the last person I would imagine getting excited about James Bond.
I love James Bond.
Are you excited for the new movie?
I am soft excited for the new movie. I love Daniel Craig as James Bond, as we much discussed on the Major Spoilers podcast. But my ongoing issue is that I don't like his wife. I don't like this girl who they brought back, and I hope they murder her in the first scene. And I know that's horrible. But yeah, and I think James Bond, and this is what we might wind up doing on Geek History Lesson, is sort of like a more open discussion, is I think he's evolved to be really interesting in the latest incarnation. Like they're making him more aware. Bond. Yeah, like there's a line in Skyfall where Javier Bardem like touches his legs and is like, "Oh, Mr. Bond, this will be your first time." And Daniel Craig just says, "What do you think this is my first time?" And just like the implication of that line is so cool and like so forward thinking. And the women are slightly more age appropriate. And so I think if they're able to continue evolving that character, that's what I'm interested in, as opposed to the girls painted gold. I mean, that's great too. Yeah.
No, I would really, I think it'd be very interesting to get an Ian Fleming, if he were alive, take on, the remaking of Casino Royale, or just on the current Craig list, even though Quantum of Silence was a short story that Fleming had pinned, just to kind of get his reaction. I think he'd be really cool, or he probably was really cool with the Sean Connery Bond, and I don't remember when Fleming died, but he probably would have been okay with the Roger Moore Bond as well. But but those are two very different time period Bonds where some of the activities and antics were appropriate. But I really do like Daniel Craig as James Bond, and every movie that he's been in, I've enjoyed immensely. Still not better than Majesty's Secret Service, but Skyfall is just, I think, brilliant in how you're deconstructing and rebuilding who James Bond is throughout that film, and really putting a lot of resolve into his character about why he does the things that he does. So
but that is all to say, that's why I haven't watched Lock and Key yet, and also because I just finished the 3rd season of Sabrina.
Oh, I'm still in the middle of Sabrina. I am still in, what's the other one? I'm still in the 4th season of Magicians, the middle of that I have to finish up. But I was trying to get through Lock and Key today because I was hoping that you had watched it so we could have a discussion all episode long about Lock and Key.
I'm so sorry. But then,
nope, it's totally fine.
Then Dan happened. So.
Then Dan happened, right? Dan happens. That should be the name of this episode. But I'll give people, maybe I'll talk about this next week. But I have very mixed thoughts about this TV adaptation. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's good. But, and I don't want to get into that weird, toxic fandom of, well, it's nothing like the book and so therefore it sucks. I'm not into that category at all. But I do have a lot of passion for the books. And I will say that watching that original pilot that Fox did, unfortunately, colored my view on watching this series.
Interesting. Well, I'm hoping to have watched it starting this weekend. So if I have, I'll let you know, and maybe we can chat about it next week.
Okay. All right. So tell everybody what you're doing tonight and what is it, this weekend, and also next week as well if you're in the L.A. area.
Yes, if you're in LA, come to the Hudson Theater in Hollywood. On the main stage, I am performing my debut show with the Wallace Studio Ensemble. It's called Lucid. It is a devised experimental theater piece that is designed to play out like a dream. It's crazy. We opened yesterday. We're playing today and Sunday, and then next week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, before we go international and take it to the Brighton Fringe Festival, which is one of the largest fringe festivals in the world. So please come see it. If you're in the LA area, if you're an industry type, reach out to me. I can probably comp you, but please come see it. It's really good. And also people take their clothes off, so that's fun too. It's not for the children. There's
not
no
for the children. Oh, no full frontal nudity. So I guess that's okay.
That's Ashley, the after midnight.
There you go. That's when everything goes blue. Where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Ashley V. Robinson. The V is very important. You can find me almost every week, except when I'm not, on the Major Spoilers podcast and Geek History Lesson in the Major Spoilers podcast feed. All
right. Thank you so much for joining us this week, Ashley, and dear viewers and dear people who are watching in the replay. Thank you for hanging out with us. Thank you for watching. Again, if you do want to join us live, 4:00 p.m. Central Time, every Friday, except when we don't, right? So those are few and far between. I'm going to try to do even more Finally Fridays for you this year. And don't forget, Saturday afternoon, we have Major Spoilers Plays, where I sit down and play some video games and interact with you guys for a couple of hours. But more importantly, if you are a Patreon member at patreon.com/Major Spoilers, we have a VIP live chat tomorrow afternoon, Saturday afternoon. This would be February 22nd at 1:00 p.m. Central Time. I hope we see you there. But if we don't, we'll see you next time when it's finally Friday. Take care. Look at all those awesome people scrolling on by. Did you guys enjoy that? I hope you did. Thank you, Vince4044, for the compliments, for the great show. Oh, there you go. Scald's Tale. I maybe try and catch the play this weekend. I hope you do. J. Michael T. says later. Hey, later to you, man. I think your name's about to come up unless I just missed it. Maybe it's the. Maybe it's under the T's. Peter and Rachel. Relaxing Plum. Really? Rowdy? This list goes on because there's so many great supporters, so many great patrons. at patreon.com/majorspoilers. We're just over 500 right now. I would love to see that double by the end of the year. Let's make it happen. You guys have a great week.